Hello and welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Culture Nerd Podcast. This week, we are going to be talking about the recent Green Lantern screen tests. Apparently, after they cast Hal Jordan, the screen tests for John Stewart have already begun, and a couple names that should be familiar to everyone are officially in the front running. And then we're going to talk about this new rumor that David Zaslav is extremely upset with the production of or how long it's taking for the Batman to be introduced in the DCU. So he's already been talking about wanting Robert Pattinson and the Batman world to be folded into the DCU. So we're going to be talking about that rumor. We're going to talk about the screen test information, and we're also going to be talking about the new animated kids movie, The Dynamic Duo, because it is a kids movie and it's not tied to the Batman or the other stuff. So we're going to be talking about all that and a little bit more DC content. But here we go. And here we are. How are you doing, buddy?
Doing fabulous.
How was your staycation?
Staycation was great. Car broke down. Went literally nowhere. No, it was good. I got to. I don't know. I feel like I got to watch the Penguin show. Love it. The Penguin show.
We're going to talk about that in our other episode because
we'll do that another day.
A whole thing we have to talk about.
I think it's so funny that they just, instead of bait and switching us, the Agatha show told you exactly what it was going to be. It was going to be big. It was going to be avant-garde. It was going to be gay fabulous. I'm loving that show. I'm liking the pacing of that show. But the thing that's hasn't hit my radar, because that's what we're here to do. What do you mean Green Lantern screen tests? Where are we at? What are they doing on the screen tests?
Yeah, so we found out that just over this past weekend, they officially sat down with screen testing for John Stewart. Apparently, this was happening on October 4th. They actually had two actors in particular go in. So last Friday and over the weekend, they had some more details that came about. So this was interesting. So the Slow Horses showrunner, James Hawes, is going to
Which is another great show. Yeah. This season of Slow Horses has been fabulous. Yeah. That's the other show we've been watching.
So he has actually been tapped to direct the first block of episodes for Lantern. So he's working with them on this project, and he's making that chunk of episodes. So another fantastic
name. Slow Horses is, if you haven't seen it, it's about the derelicts of the MI6. Some episodes, some of the shows are a slow burn, but sometimes the episodes feel like an action movie, and you'll have 3 episodes that are just one day. So to be able to play with pacing like that, that's kind of what we want, right? We want to see the investigation, but I don't know if we get a 2-episode battle, but yes, please.
Right. So that was pretty cool news. And then shortly after he dropped this news, the reporter, Boris Kitt, also said, oh, by the way, the screen tests for Lantern were today. And then turns out that the main people that are being looked at right now are actually going to be none other than the name that we brought up before, Aaron Pierre. He is actually one of the frontrunners. And then the other is someone who was not actually listed on all of our details. Let me go ahead and pull it up here because the other actor is by the name of Stephen James. One second, let me pull him up. Yeah, Stephen James. He is known primarily for he's a Canadian actor who's known primarily for the projects If Beale Street Could Talk and 21 Bridges. He's a fantastic actor. He's very good at what he does. He was in Beacon 23, Homecoming. He's had a handful of projects to his name, but apparently this fella is actually the primary frontrunner of the two of them. So this guy right here in the center is the primary frontrunner, probably because his body of work, and he's more of an unknown than Aaron Pierre is.
I wonder if this also means they're shooting in Canada. Maybe that, I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Maybe they want to have maybe for tax purposes. You have to have
tax purposes. They're trying to be we're going to hire a Canadian for this role because
they got to get to that 51% Canadianness to shoot there.
Exactly.
Do you think that they're doing in these tests? You think they're doing dialogue? You think they're doing posing and action stuff? You think they're doing like, hey, pretend like you're making a giant green fist in front of you? Like, do you think they're doing stuff like that?
They have to be. I mean, because that's part of the screen test for these things. And what they do is typical screen tests for any time they've done any kind of role like this, is that they take the actor and say, okay, here is a mock script, and I'm going to dress you in a green sheet, or here's a black outfit with some green on it, and you're going to basically do this right now. And they basically tell them like flat out, like, okay, here's a scenario, let's go. And
when you shoot Green Lantern stuff, do you make noises like Power Rangers? Do you ever do they form a giant sword and then be like, "Aya"? Like, does that ever happen?
Well, it's funny because I remember a few years back, back when they were actually doing the casting for the Green Lantern movie that is now in infamy. There was a specific actor who talked about how he bombed his thing because one, he used the Batman voice, and they were like, nope, Hal Jordan doesn't have a gravelly voice. What are you doing? And then the other thing was that he kept making sound effects every time he was using the ring, like pew. And they're like, okay, this is getting silly. You're not taking this seriously.
Okay, so there's no associated noise with the ring unless the individual with the ring is being attacked, right?
Right.
If I was like, oh, but like that's because I'm being hit, not because I make that noise to make a sword.
Right. So like they do have certain things where they were like, if the scene has it, like when they were doing Star Wars, the screen testing for Star Wars, they had like another person feeding them lines and sound effects to get the vibe going. So if the person feeding you the information has the sound effects, then that's the sound effect for that scene. But most of the time, no, you don't have. You're encouraged not to make the pew sounds when you're doing things.
I would like to ask you, because there are many heroes that I can identify their flavor, but with the Green Lanterns, I'm not as well versed with them. What kind of manifestations do these two Green Lanterns create? I'm talking, I've seen the cartoons. They make brick wall. I mean, literally anything, robots, brick walls. What do you think we will see, or what do these characters naturally do?
I'm going to actually pull up a comic for that, because there was one comic where they in particular talk about how unique each of these lanterns are to each other. So let me grab it real fast.
Wonderful. This is the part of the show that Michael takes over the show completely. Taylor can't hear anybody. Question of the day. You go to Taylor's room. What's the first thing you steal off those shelves? You can steal anything, okay? He's never going to find out. What do you see on this wall? Do you go for the Pokemon stuff? Do you take one of those helmets? Some magical spell is going to take over. You're never going to find out. But put it in the comments below. Thanks, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe.
Oh,
Taylor, show me this. Nothing.
Right.
I said nothing.
So I was actually with you when we bought this. This is actually one of my older books from our high school days. This was Green Lantern Rebirth. It was when they reintroduced Hal Jordan into the main canon.
Great.
At the
did
end,
you buy it at Comics and Stuff,
yes,
or did you get it at the Barnes and Noble?
We bought it at Comics and Stuff. So this trade, let me pull up the page, because they talk about how each of these lanterns are unique. So it's when he's like, boom, I'm Hal Jordan again. They all start doing the Green Lantern thing. They all start doing this stuff. And he breaks down what makes each of these guys unique. Here we go. All right. He says they start attacking, and like Sinestro, I think, was attacking. No, it was a Parallax thing. So Parallax possessed one of the Guardians, and he starts talking about all the lanterns that are with him. So you've got Hal, you got John, you got Guy, you've got Kyle. We already know that the DCU has Hal, John, and Guy. So this is hopefully what they're doing. And he says here, John's constructs are built from the inside out. If you look closely, you can see every nut and bolt that makes it work. Nothing he creates is hollow, with or without the ring. So that's one thing that John does, is because John was an architect. A lot of what he does is structural design all the way through to the top. So if he's building like a crane, all of his projections are built with like exoskeletons and endoskeletons and everything, every detail like that.
He's literally projecting
his brain
and a real crane. This is how it would look like. Okay.
Right. And he says, Guy, Gardner's ring is like a leaky faucet. It sparks always. His sparks are always flying. even when he's just standing still, his willpower can't wait to get free. So with Guy, every time he creates something, it's really chaotic, it's really flary because it's pushing itself out. It's kind of like I would describe like Kylo Ren's lightsaber, how in Star Wars every saber was like super smooth, and then you had Kylo Ren's, which was kind of like flary and crackly all over because there's so much energy coming out of it.
Does that mean also that he will have lots of constructs happening? Like if he like makes a joke about a bird, he'll construct a bird that will tweet and then fizzle out?
No, so in the example on the page is that he created just a straight up razor blade, like a giant circular saw, and it's literally just the blade. Like he's not doing what John does and makes the full saw. He's like, here's a giant blade and here's all the frays of electricity coming off of it.
Cool.
So it's like he just makes the raw thing that he wants to make, and then it looks messy because so much energy is coming off of it.
Very anime sounding as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Blah blah blah. I'm trying to find it. Kyle scratching his head. So it sharpens into view, constantly being refined by his own imagination. Kyle is never satisfied. He's an artist. So with Kyle, because he's an artist, it shows that he's actually making constructs, and then the big hand is coming out and redrawing the constructs to make them better, because as an artist, he's constantly refining his work in real time. So you're seeing him create something and it's being corrected as he's creating it.
That's really cool in terms of a fight, because if he throws a right hook and then he changes what it is for the next attack.
So like it starts off as a fist, and then as it finishes the pull, it pulls back, and the fist now has knuckles or brass knuckles. And then when it comes up for another swing, it has another refinement. Like he's constantly refining the design as he's doing it. So my hope is that they do something like that, because they all talk about how each of these people pull from their backgrounds when they do things. Hal Jordan himself is military background. He's in the Air Force. So a lot of his designs are military weaponry.
How often, I've seen it done, how often do they make Gundam suits around themselves? How often do they do something like that? Is it only for showy things? Okay.
From my understanding, the only time I've seen anybody make like a full-on mech suit was Kyle, because he's a comic book artist. And he has that animated view to things. So he's like, I'm in a robot today. And and he's the only one that does that.
Okay.
But the others are like, John Stewart will be like, okay, here is a mixture of my weapons from the military, and here's something I designed. So like he'll have like a construction equipment with like an M4 hooked on it. Like he has like this mix of all of his life in his creations. And then with Guy, it's like, here's a giant bullet. I'm not making the gun. Here's the bullet. Like
sure.
It's just chaos and just pure like, this is what I made because this is how I do it.
In the Lantern show, then, what are the two lanterns we're getting there?
We're getting John and we're getting Hal. So we're probably going to see Hal create a lot of like, oh, he made a plane, or he made a Jeep, or he made like some military weapon. And then you've got John, who will probably at one point put on flak gear and a military helmet and have a gun. And then he'll be like, oh, I just built a crane because I know how to pick things up, like construction and / military. So you're going to have this like, one's in the Marines and one's in the Air Force. So there's Air Force weapons. Here's Marine infantry weapons. Like you're going to see a lot of that, but also other things from their personalities.
Are there any lanterns that like just summon animals, like weird, like magical gorillas?
Not that I know of, but I'm also not super familiar with Jessica Cruz or Simon Baz and how they do their constructs.
Okay.
So if anyone, it would probably be one of those two, but I'm not familiar with them enough to say yes or no.
And do you think that you introduce the 3 lanterns so that if we ever do get a standalone lantern movie, the audience gets to see the come up of this new lantern, because we already have all these other characters established?
So from what I understand is that the idea of having John be the new rookie is that he is going to be the Green Lantern going forward with the Justice League projects. He is going to be the one that's the same relative age as Superman and those characters. And we're going to have Hal and Guy as the more veterans. And if they do end up bringing in Kyle, then Kyle will be the new kid on the block who's never been a Lantern, and here he's now being introduced. So John would then mentor him. But I don't see for a second that we're going to get Jessica Cruz or Simon Baz, because they are way later down the timeline. So maybe at like the end of chapter 1, beginning of chapter 2, we'll see Jessica.
Now, these Green Lanterns, from everything that you've told me, fit in perfectly with the new James Gunn Superman. How do you do how do you even get Robert Pattinson into this universe at this point?
So that is actually so it came out that there's this big rumor that David Zaslav has been furious with the production of the DCU Batman, and that he was basically telling them, you need to find a way to make Robert Pattinson Batman our Batman. And there was a lot of rumors, a lot of conjecture, a lot of people saying that this is what he said, this is why he said it, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Long story short, the more I digged into it, the more I understand that the issue wasn't at all that he wanted them to make it happen. It was that he was more lamenting that because we have this deal with Matt Reeves, we can't do this even if we wanted to. And the deal with Matt Reeves is that you get autonomy and we're not going to mess with your world.
Yeah, and I think that this again shows the difference between old Warner Brothers and new Warner Brothers, right? Like this was this weird deal along with all the other weird deals that they did with their heroes. And then this one just stuck.
Yeah.
Now it's stuck in a way that other things haven't stuck, as we've now seen with the Joker follow-up really failing short from the first movie for whatever reason that is. And we'll talk about that very soon on another episode.
Yeah, and it's not so much that it's failing, is that it's actually making kind of the same numbers the first one made. But the problem that people are having with it is that the Joker sequel was like $200 million, and the first one was not near that price tag.
Right. So let's bookmark that. We'll pick that up again.
Yes.
As I'm watching the Penguin show, the extension of this Matt Reeves universe, and watching the gritty realism, the kind of down-to-earth nature, the actual things that we're seeing in that show,
yep,
that does not fit in with magical space rings and a guy from another planet. Like, you would have to the introduction of magic and science fiction to that degree would be an event like when Gotham just flooded at the end of the Batman movie. It would be world shaking, and it doesn't sound like that's what Superman is. Superman he's already established. The world is aware of these things and are dealing with them as best they can.
Right. So the whole idea that people are like, I want this movie to be part of this, it's like that doesn't work. It's the same reason why when they looked at it, they could not fit Chris Nolan's Batman into anything that they wanted to do with Man of Steel sequel.
Yeah, like, it doesn't work. That
it's
Batman,
not practical. It can't happen because it does not work in any way that you make these realistic characters this realistic. No, it's not feasible.
When I think about those Nolan movies, do you get, in hindsight now, it's a little bit like his James Bond, right? Because Tenet was a weird James Bond movie. And like now in hindsight, he's kind of a James Bond with a bodysuit.
Yeah, pretty much. Like the way I've always seen it was that Chris Nolan's probably never going to make a James Bond film because he already made 3 James Bond films that were the Batman trilogy and Tenet. Anne
Hathaway would be a great Bond girl. I don't know why the internet hates her so much. She would be fantastic in one of those movies.
I'm curious why the internet hates Anne Hathaway. Is there something that I don't know? Like, are we supposed to hate her?
Taylor, ladies look at her and just hate her for some reason. She is talented. She's a taller Natalie Portman. I will take her any day of the week. Let's get her in a Bond movie.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
I also feel like this is them shooting themselves in the foot by not having this greater image, and why they had to bring James Gunn in so somebody could view this from a 9,000 foot lens, right? And be like, how do we get all of these pieces together?
Yeah. It's a funny thing because the more I look at it and see all these things, the studio wanted all of these things, like all of these other pieces of the DC universe to fail. And the only reason the Batman universe is not being shuttered like everything else was because that movie made some good money.
It's a fantastic movie. I think Matt Reeves knew what he was doing. And I think that people didn't have faith in him for some reason, which I don't understand. He's got a pretty good track record up until this point.
He's got a great track record. Yeah. Like he got on our radar back when Cloverfield came out, and that was a great movie. And he made Cloverfield, and then what was his follow-up after Cloverfield? Like he made the Planet of the Apes movies that were like really good too. So,
and what's wild is that when we talk about Cloverfield, you remember the found footage, you remember the running away. That's a Godzilla movie. That's just basically like a Godzilla movie, right? Because like the other Cloverfield movie was basically an alien movie.
I feel like people still don't understand that the Cloverfield movies are an anthology. Like they're not meant to be this coherent,
I don't think I saw
straight
the
line
third
storytelling.
one. What is the third one?
Are you talking about the space one, where they're like the space station one?
Yeah, I don't think I saw that one.
It was all right. It had some really cool moments, but it was all right. But I did really like 10 Cloverfield Lane. That was a fantastic film that messed me up a little bit.
I also really like that movie because the whole movie, you're like, you don't know if it's real or not, and then the end is it's absolutely super real.
Like it's worse than you probably thought because
yeah.
like,
who directed that movie?
Dan Trachtenbaum, I think.
Mr. Trachtenbaum, what are you doing?
He needs to do something superhero. That's what he needs to do.
Is Zaslav I also feel like this anger is basically him lamenting the writer's strike. That all of these projects that should have been 2025 or this 2024 movies, Taylor, nothing's happening this year. I mean, it's all the town is feeling it. I have many actor friends that are lamenting and are having to get day jobs again because the motto is stay alive till 25.
That's insane to me. But yeah, that's pretty much what it sounds like a lot of people are realizing is that the strike put such a hit on everything. And the only reason why Superman wasn't one of those projects that took a massive hit like every other thing that Marvel did. Like Marvel literally killed projects. We just because James Gunn was able to have everything ready, they still met their timeline. But the project, the work on the Batman Part 2 was halted for 9 months.
I'm also a little confused with Marvel because they've talked about this retooling and all of this new stuff going forward. But then I see Shang-Chi's in the gym again, and he's getting into shape, and he's coming back. And they are going ahead with Armor Wars. Like, there's all of these. Confused
according
about
to Don Cheadle, it's not moving ahead. So he said that Armor Wars doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, but Iron Heart still exists?
Yes, because that project was already filmed and done, and I don't know why they haven't just killed it and did what they did with Willow and just got the tax write-off.
It's already filmed?
They did the whole thing already. It was done. But it was apparently it was done and they just don't want to do anything with it. And it could have been released like a year ago. They could have released it during the strike if they wanted to. So that's crazy to me that they haven't done anything with it.
Yeah, and I also, with all I guess this is not the episode for it. We'll have to do maybe its own episode on it. But when do we hear the definitive nature of the Spider-Man 4 deal? Because I keep hearing all these names and it's all guaranteed, but I don't necessarily think that this is the final deal yet. And I feel like some of this stuff could fall through.
So it is another episode probably to talk about it, but apparently the word on the street is that the Spider-Man 4 is going to be called Spider-Man 4, the something in, I think the Man in Black or the Villain in Black or the King in Black. I think it was the King in Black. And it's going to be it's going to be a multiversal story because Null, I think is his name. The bad guy from Venom 3 is now going to start invading the multiverse because the Venom symbiotes themselves are a multiversal entity.
And that's how you bring Tom Hardy back in 2 movies?
No, Tom Hardy says that he's done after this one. So my theory is that he does die in this film, and then we're going to get a new Eddie Brock in the Prime timeline.
Have we introduced have we met Eddie Brock? I know we did in Tobey Maguire's, but did we meet it in the Disney one? The Sony Disney one? No, okay.
We do not have an Eddie Brock yet for that universe.
I think that, what's funny is I think you just go military. You do that story. It's a government thing and they've been holding it and they have a suit. They have a new Captain America, but it's really bad. And it's really attracted to Spider-Man for some reason.
Yeah. They could do that. That would be pretty funny if they did. But we'll see.
Does Zaslav have any power to ram Robert Pattinson into this James Gunn universe?
He does. However, he knows as well as everyone else is that if he does this, if he forces like a square in a circle, you lose Matt Reeves, and Matt Reeves would then walk, and then you would lose Batman Part 2 and whatever the next show is after that. Like you would lose the perspective of having more of that universe. That universe is essentially dead, and you would have to have someone else come in and pick up the pieces.
And so Reeves said that he has a 2 and a 3 story, right? That he sees this over 2 more films.
Yeah, he says that he has idea for 3 films and maybe 1 or 2 other spin-offs, and then that's it.
Do you think they filmed 2 and 3 back to back?
No, it would not be ready. So they're not doing that.
Okay.
Like they just turned in the script for the Batman Part 2. Like there's no way he would have another script ready to go.
And that has that script been approved yet? Like is that a go?
Sounds like it did because they're planning on filming next year. So
okay.
Apparently they were approving the pages as he was turning them in, and now the final script is done.
And by next year, do you mean January 1 or like
all I know is that it's supposed to be Q1 of next year. So like anywhere between January through March, they're going to start filming.
And then have it out by a Halloween 26.
It's still set for a 26 date because it got delayed because of the strikes.
Wow. Well, I think that we might need to talk about the Penguin show. So if that's the case, then I think it's time to put a bookmark in this episode of another quality episode of the Cultured Nerd Podcast. If you'd like to help support us, please head over to the patreon.com/theculturednerd. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you don't have any money to throw our way, that is totally fine. Please head on over. Please like, comment. Please subscribe to the channel. Remember, question of the day, you're alone in Taylor's office. What are you stealing off the shelves? I've already prepped you for this.
That's not something.
So please answer it down below. You're breaking in the middle of the night. What are you going to steal?
Nope. We're not encouraging that.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see all you kids and cats next time.
Did you really encourage them to break into my house on the time when I was picking up that comic?
I didn't say that. I didn't say break in. I say you get access to Taylor's room and you can take anything and he'll never know. What would you want to take?
Good Lord, you're going to just invite a can of worms that I am not ready for.
I don't think anyone wants to steal a can of worms, but maybe a Power Rangers helmet.